Is this ours? Is it marked government property?
No.
Nothing to do with us then. Leave it.
We play the contest again. Time Lord.
Hello and welcome to another entry in the History of series. Today we'll be looking at a primordial force best known for its battles with the Doctor, particularly the 7th Doctor. I am of course talking about the being known as Fenric. So without further ado, let's dive into his story. According to the 7th Doctor, the being later known as Fenric was one of two forces, one good and one evil, which were present at the dawn of time and became caught in it. Somehow, only the evil force survived. The entity, as he was once known, was also posited to be the personification of pure, undiluted evil, being a formless, black cloud that flowed and coalesced, throbbing with a terrible passion. The Doctor later, however, claimed Fenric was merely a part of nature that was out of balance, not a force of evil. Some sources state that Fenric originated not in the beginnings of N-Space, but like the other Old Ones, in an ancestor universe. One of these accounts stated that Fenric bore the name of Hastur the Unspeakable. Some accounts related to the Elder Gods, or Great Old Ones, speculated that they were survivors of a race equivalent to the Time Lords in their universe, who had survived its destruction and tried to gain a foothold in N-Space. According to one of these accounts, contrary to the 7th Doctor's claim that the evil force had no body of its own, Fenric did have a body, one with 1,000 limbs that stretched across several dimensions, but like many Old Ones it became dependent on possessing others. He could presumably inhabit any body in any time, possibly killing the original consciousness if it was suppressed long enough. He was able to control an army of hemivores, though this was a drain on his mind, and he was able to bestow free will onto individual creatures. Fenric was seen as being too dangerous, even for the Elder Gods who were capable of dying despite their great power. A creation of one of these gods, Weyland's shield, gave the wearer the ability to destroy matter and change reality. Fenric sought it, while the other gods supported Weyland in his game against Fenric, with the shield as the prize. He was infuriated when he learned of the conspiracy against him. According to the War Master, the hunting gods of Fenrir, which were related to Fenric, were among the powerful factions wiped out by the Regulator, also known as Bilis Manger. Prior to his 6th regeneration, the Doctor's first known encounter with Fenric was in Constantinople in the middle of the 3rd century. Fenric, then known as Abu Fenran, had been terrorizing the area when the prince, El Amjad, tried to force him to leave. Fenric agreed, provided that the prince gave him the first thing he named when he returned to his castle. El Amjad agreed to this, but when the first thing he named was his youngest daughter, due to Fenric's meddling, he instead sent a chest of gold. When Fenric learned the prince would not give up his daughter, he continued to ravage the countryside. Eventually, the Doctor arrived in the city, and agreed to help in exchange for freeing a slave called Zelikia. The Doctor went out to Fenric and challenged him to a game of chess, with Fenric carving pieces from the bones in the desert to play against the lonely man. After 40 days of stalemates, the Doctor was able to convince Fenric that with a single move, he would beat the Elder God. Fenric then spent another 40 days trying to figure out what this one move was, growing weaker as the days passed. Eventually, he became so weak that the Doctor was able to circumvent the game and trap Fenric in a flask, banishing him to the Shadow Dimension. Just prior, the Mandarin had been seeking out the entity, but was unable to reach him before his imprisonment. Thus, the Mandarin travelled to the entity's non-world, challenging him to a game. After settling the stakes, being that the Mandarin would relinquish his body or he would take the entity as his toy, the entity chose 4-dimensional chess as their game. They played for an unknowable duration of time, the advantage shifting between them as the game progressed, and the entity began to win towards the endgame. Sensing this, the Mandarin manoeuvred his pieces to ensure a stalemate, a new concept to him, and he thanked the entity for teaching him this and declined his demands of a rematch, as he believed it would be pointless, for they were equally matched. After the Mandarin left, his words remained with the entity long after. Fenric's power was such that his influence still continued to pervade space and time. He set into motion events that would ensure his escape. Fenric summoned the Ancient One, the last hemivore from the future. When Vikings stole the flask containing Fenric sometime after the 10th century, the Hemivore followed them and the flask to Northumbria and Maiden's Point. On the flask's voyage in the North Atlantic Ocean, the Vikings encountered a crashed ice warrior vessel holding a parasite the Martians called the Flood. Fenric planned to use it to infect the Earth's water and release him, but was stopped when the 12th Doctor, who remembered Fenric from their encounter in his personal past, told the Hemivore Prime of this betrayal, which would replace them with the Flood, and thus erase them from existence. This caused his former puppet to detonate a volcano, which wiped out the virus strain on Earth. Now knowing of and fearing its influence, the remaining Vikings buried the flask beneath St. Jude's Church, leaving a runic inscription warning that the flask was cursed. The remaining Hemivore remained beneath the waters of Maiden's Bay, gradually recruiting new members. The Hemivores, also known as the Wolves of Fenric, awaited their master's release. Manipulating the timelines, Fenric ensured that the 6th Doctor regenerated into a baffled innocent. Despite the 7th Doctor starting out as a hapless imbecile, he still managed to triumph over Fenric's manipulations on Paradise Towers and Tolport G715. He also employed Halgogi Carry to timestorm Ace to Iceworld so that she could meet the Doctor and join him on his travels, after ensuring she had the darkness in her past. As Ace bore the curse, Fenric hoped that he could use Ace as a weapon against the Doctor. Fenric then manoeuvred the pair to the Psychic Circus, and as she conducted a black magic ritual, used a time storm to whisk Lady Painfort from her native time period of 1638 to 1988, so she could retrieve the Nemesis statue. In 1943, Maiden's Point served as the location of a military base housing the Ultima, an early computer designed to decipher German code. The Ultima also had the secret purpose of translating runic descriptions that would free Fenric. Once released, he occupied the body of Dr. Judson and had the Hemivores, already killing every human they could find, summon the Ancient One from his dormant state. Fenric later possessed Soviet Captain Soren. The Doctor attempted to trap Fenric once again using a game of chess, as before, but having taken over Soren's body, Fenric had learned the solution to the chess puzzle. Fenric was finally defeated when the Ancient One turned, destroying Soren's body and leaving Fenric without a corporeal host. Fenric was returned to the Outer Darkness for a couple of years when he began a game against another Elder God called Weyland for control of Weyland's shield, an artifact that could grant omnipotence to an Elder God. As a response to this, Weyland has started to use the Doctor, Ace and Hex as pawns to track down and deliver him the shield. When Fenric became aware of this, he began tailing the TARDIS crew unbeknownst to them. However, Fenric had unintentionally made his presence known to the Doctor when he left a chess set in a Swiss sanatorium where the Doctor battled with the Celestial Toymaker. After this discovery, the Doctor began battling the Elder Gods more frequently, in an attempt to draw more attention from them so he could eventually discover the conspiracy he'd become involved in. He fought the Carnus Koi with Ace and Hex in Alaska, and then began travelling in a black TARDIS with Sally Morgan and Lysandra Aristides, who helped him fight the Mien Karalash, Duraleth, and Moloch. When his activities had drawn the attention of Fenric, he stranded the Doctor in 5th century Denmark. There he temporarily inhabited the body of a local Norse warrior travelling with Beowulf, and transported the Doctor to another dimension. However, what Fenric didn't anticipate was the Doctor providing his companions with the necessary information to rescue him, and giving them Weyland's shield. The shield guided the TARDIS crew to the pocket dimensions that the Doctor had been transported to, and there they discovered that they had been used as pawns by Weyland to further his master plan. Fenric had taken the body of a Scandinavian warrior living in the 9th century, and discovered that Weyland constructed his shield at the behest of the other Elder Gods, who saw Fenric as an uncontrollable element, and attempted to manipulate him into his destruction by leading him on a quest for the shield, an artifact that would inevitably destroy him. After the game was finished, the pocket dimension began to collapse, and Fenric possessed Hex. Hex sacrificed himself to prevent Fenric from permanently taking control and gaining power, saving the Doctor, Ace, Sally, and Lysandra. When Fenric's corporeal form was destroyed by the collapsing dimension, he was left as a disembodied entity alongside Weyland and Hex. Fenric was part of one Gallifreyan prediction of the final apocalypse, where the Timewyrm would devour Rassilon when Fenric slipped its chains. On personal terms, their encounter with Fenric left an impression on the Doctor and Ace, who would continue to think about it in their travels, Ace particularly remembering her experience in the Time Storm. And that is the story of Fenric, a rather short one very intertwined with the 7th Doctor, which does make sense, considering this incarnation is in part a creation of the Elder God. For a being with such presence and from the same race as the Great Intelligence, it's strange that he has such a small presence overall. But I suppose if you can be bested by the Doctor that easily, you don't really deserve to. But anyway guys, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video then make sure to leave a like and subscribe down below to show your support, as it really helps out the channel. But as always, thanks for watching.